London, 1844. It was one of those evenings so polished that even the whispers wore gloves. The Countess of Alderney's ballroom glittered like a domesticated constellation. Chandeliers ablaze, velveted waltzes, and conversations sharp enough to draw blood. Selina crossed the marble floor with the grace of a woman who knew exactly where she was stepping, and, more importantly, where she would not step anymore. She was the Duchess of Havensbury by name and duty, but not always by heart. 3 minutes late for the waltz, murmured Lady B. Harcourt, the kind of friend every wise woman should have. The universe does love drama when its heroine is exhausted. I'm no heroine, Selina replied, a faint smile on her lips. Just a woman who has learned to hold conversations with silence. B squeezed her hand. Silence screams too, darling. And tonight, yours is deafening. Across the ballroom, Frederick, the Duke, watched. Tall, impeccable, and cursed with an intellect sharp enough to slice through both reputations and emotions. He was skilled at figures, treaties, and hunting. Less so at the small courtesies of the heart, a touch, an apology, a simple stay. He had brought her flowers that afternoon, and absent-mindedly handed them to his secretary instead. Men of power often confuse gestures with presence and authority with affection. When the orchestra swelled, Selina heard a pair of voices near the marble columns, laughter wrapped in venom. They say His Grace prefers his ledgers to his lady. Quite right. Titles demand calculation, hearts only expense. It didn't sting because it was cruel. It stung because it might have been true. She inhaled slowly. Beneath her corset, a small locket pressed against her heart. Inside, a torn page from her late mother's diary. Truth always leaves a trail, sometimes light, sometimes shadow. For weeks now, anonymous letters had arrived at her home. Hints of a scandal involving the children's asylum in Southwark, the one she funded. Someone had stolen donations using the Havensbury name, someone close. Tonight's envelope had arrived by trembling hand. Just 4 words and a small drawing. Whitehall. Horse. Bridge. 8. A knight chess piece sketched beside them. B leaned over her shoulder. Horse on chess, and that smells of the nightly club. The gambling society Frederick's trying to reform. And 8 could mean 8 o'clock. Or the 8th bridge. The 8th bridge is Southwark, Selina whispered. And Whitehall could be the start, not the end. If it's a trail, I'll follow it. You're leaving now? B gasped. In the middle of the Countess's spectacle, I do adore you. I thought you'd say don't go. I said I was prudent, not foolish. Take my shawl. And this truth. Love that doesn't listen forgets the password to the heart. Selina smiled faintly. Thank you. If Frederick asks, tell him I went out to breathe. I'll tell him you went out to live. Frederick saw her glide through the sea of silk, toward the terrace doors. He almost called her name. Almost. He'd almost done so many things lately. See without pride. Touch without calculation. Speak without armor. But he had postponed each one, as though tenderness were a luxury he could afford later. Your Grace, said Lord Pembroke, approaching with a paper. The Nightly Club's ledgers. Someone has revised them. Look at the signatures. Not yours. Frederick's gaze darkened. Who else knows? Very few. There are also whispers. About the Southwark Asylum. The Duke didn't hear the rest. Selina's scent, jasmine and rain, had vanished. The terrace stood empty. A single lace glove rested on the balustrade, stamped with a faint chess emblem. For the first time, Frederick felt something pierce through his polished composure. Not fear of scandal, but fear of losing her because of himself. Bring the carriage. Now. London streets exhaled soot and mist as Selina stepped into the night. B's shawl draped over her shoulders, the cryptic note tucked in her glove. Whitehall first, she told the driver. Then Southwark Bridge. At this hour, ma'am? Truth doesn't keep the clock, she replied. The carriage rolled on. Through the fogged window, London passed like a half-forgotten memory, facades asleep, lamplight blinking like tired eyes. On the seat beside her lay another envelope. one she swore hadn't been there before. Inside, a blank page. At the bottom, the same chess knight. Clever. He wants me to write. She took out her pencil and scribbled one line. I'm here. If not for me, then for the children. Folding the note, she tucked it into the envelope and pinned it to her shawl. When they reached Whitehall, a boy in a cap appeared out of nowhere. Message for the Duchess. That's me tonight, she smiled. If you came alone, go to the south side of Southwark Bridge. 8 bells. Bring courage. Courage, I've packed 2 of those, she murmured, signaling the driver to continue. Meanwhile, Frederick's carriage cut through the London fog like a judgment. Whitehall, then Southwark Bridge, he ordered. And have men posted along the docks and discreetly. As discreet as possible, Your Grace, the footman said, which in London meant the entire city will know within the hour. Leaning back, Frederick stared at the ceiling of his coach, ornate with golden filigree, now resembling a maze of unanswered questions. The equation he had long ignored whispered at last. Duty plus pride plus silence, distance. He remembered their wedding day, Selina laughing in the garden, her hands dirty with soil and dreams. Family, she'd said, is watered with presents, not gold. And he, arrogant and young, had replied with a lecture on yield per acre. Fool, he muttered. Something brushed his boot, her lace glove. The chess emblem gleamed faintly. Horse, knightly, 8, Southwark. His mind raced. If someone's using my club to drain the asylum's funds, they're not afraid of shadows. They are the shadow. And what if Selina had already found that truth before him? The thought hurt worse than any scandal. It burned like shame. Southwark Bridge breathed the cold breath of the Thames. The bells of St. Paul's began to toll. 1. Selina stepped out of the carriage. Mist coiled around her skirts. The south side of the bridge was a corridor of warehouses and secrets, the kind of place daylight avoided. A figure emerged from the dark. Medium height, cloaked, moving with the precision of someone used to disappearing. The Duchess has courage, the stranger said. Not threatening, just careful. The Duchess has many things, Selina answered calmly. But what brought me here is simple. Hungry children, and a name that must not be stained. Then follow the final instruction. The stranger extended a hand. Give what you wrote, and let go of what you cannot carry. She passed the envelope. And what is that? Guilt that isn't yours. The second bell rang. Wind howled between the bridge rails. The figure reached for the note, and at that exact moment, hoofbeats thundered through the fog. Frederick's carriage skidded to a halt. He jumped out before it fully stopped, his gaze locking onto her like destiny reclaiming its debt. Selina! The cloaked stranger stepped back, slashing the rope of a small bundle tied to the bridge. It fell into the river, swallowed by the current. No! Selina lunged instinctively. Frederick caught her arm, not roughly but with desperate urgency. Forgive me. I came because... He faltered, pride dissolving. Because you matter more than any title, and because someone is using our name to harm what you love. Selina looked from the river to him. Hope flickered behind her composure. Someone wants us ruined. And apart, she said. And just threw the evidence into the Thames. The 8th bell struck. A final echo. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was an intersection. Then we dive, Frederick said quietly. Not into the river, yet, but into the truth. Together. Selina inhaled, her eyes shining with something between tears and defiance. Together, then. But know this, I'm no ornament in your investigation. I'll be your partner. I don't follow maps without legends. You'll have both my legends and my apologies. Properly footnoted. And of course B appeared, because no good friend ever misses a dramatic act. I assumed you'd need reinforcements, she said cheerfully. And perhaps a diver. My gardener's nephew claims he fishes secrets with hooks. Selina and Frederick exchanged a look, half amusement, half alliance. From the alley came a metallic clink. B darted forward and picked up a small object. A pawn, she said, holding it to the lamplight. Not a cheap one. Selina turned it over. Tiny letters were engraved on the base. K.L. Frederick frowned. Nightly Lodge. Selina's smile curved like a blade. The club. Our next stop. Who is K.L., and what secrets lie behind the private doors of Nightly Lodge? As the Thames swallows the evidence, Selina, Frederick, and B prepare for an infiltration that could unmask a thief, or unravel the Havensbury family itself. Morning in London rarely began softly. It barged in, loud, grey, and smelling faintly of regret and coal. By the time the first bells of St. Martin's chimed, the Duke and Duchess of Havensbury were already engaged in their first argument of the day. Or, as B. Harcourt liked to call it, a marital duet performed entirely in sighs and sarcasm. Selina stood by the window, sleeves rolled up, tracing the condensation with her finger. "Your men watched the bridge all night," she said. And yet the mysterious night vanished into thin fog. Frederick leaned against the mantelpiece, eyes shadowed but alive, like a man who'd just remembered what breathing felt like. "My men are used to tracking debtors, not ghosts. The fog was an ally. Then we'll need better allies." Selina turned to him. "Someone inside Nightly Lodge. Someone who knows what K.L. truly stands for." Frederick exhaled. "It is Nightly Lodge. I founded it years ago. As a gentleman's club. Investments, politics, charity circles. But lately, it's changed hands." Discreetly. "I was inattentive." "Inattentive," she echoed, tilting her head. "That's a very poetic word for neglect." His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in shame. "You're right." B entered precisely then, carrying a tray that could have fed a small regiment. "I bring sustenance, sarcasm, and scandal. In that order." She placed the tray down. "Southwark's morning edition says an unidentified noble couple was seen near the bridge last night, which means you two are about 12 hours away from societal annihilation. Congratulations." "Perfect," Selina muttered. "Now the gossip will distract whoever's behind the letters. They'll think I'm hiding from ridicule, not investigating." B blinked. "That's brilliant." "Slightly reckless. Entirely you." Frederick crossed his arms. "If we're doing this, we'll do it properly. I'll call for my solicitor. I can request the ledgers of the club under legal pretenses." Selina raised an eyebrow. "And alert the very people we're trying to expose? No. We go as they do, and unseen." B grinned. "You mean undercover?" "Oh, Selina, if you ever tire of duchessing, you'd make a splendid spy. I'll bring cloaks." Frederick sighed. "God help me. My wife and her accomplice are turning espionage into a tea party." B winked. "At least ours serves biscuits." That evening, Nightly Lodge stood like a lion in sleep, quiet, proud, and ready to bite. Gas lamps lined the columns, flickering in the mist. The club's emblem, a silver chess knight, gleamed above the doors. Frederick adjusted his cravat. "Members only after dusk. I'll enter through the front. And I'll enter through the truth," Selina said, lifting the black veil B had so dramatically insisted upon. "You distract them. I'll find the records." "Selina, it's dangerous. So is ignoring a wife for 3 years, but you seem to manage that just fine." The corner of his mouth twitched, half guilt, half admiration. "Point taken." B clapped her hands. "All right, lovebirds. The code word is bishop. If someone says it, we retreat." Selina smirked. "And if someone says queen?" B's grin was wicked. "Then we attack." Inside, the air was thick with smoke, money, and pretense. Men in waistcoats lounged by the hearth, cards snapping between fingers like whispers. Waiters glided by, faces trained into invisibility. Frederick was immediately surrounded by nods and greetings. The Duke returned to his kingdom of excess. He played the part effortlessly, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, asking about investments as if his heart weren't pacing upstairs in black silk in defiance. Meanwhile, Selina slipped into a side corridor. The floors creaked with secrets. From a half-open door came the murmur of voices. "Ledger transferred to K.L.'s private account." "She'll suspect nothing. The Duke's too proud to ask." Selina froze. The men inside spoke casually, like predators counting coins. One of them laughed, and she recognized the sound. Lord Vincent Harrow, one of Frederick's oldest associates. She leaned closer, A foolish, necessary instinct. A floorboard groaned beneath her shoe. Silence sliced the air. The door jerked open. "Well, well," Vincent drawled. "If it isn't the Duchess herself." How charmingly misplaced. Selina straightened. "Lord Harrow, I didn't realize gossip had office hours." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Curiosity is a dangerous perfume, Your Grace. It lingers." "Then perhaps you should open a window," she replied coolly. But before he could retort, another voice interrupted from behind. Calm, commanding, and cold. "Step away from my wife, Harrow." Frederick stood in the doorway, every inch the Duke. But this time his authority wasn't for show. It was protective, sharp, and absolutely done pretending. Vincent chuckled. "Frederick, old friend, I was merely escorting her grace to your ruin, perhaps?" Frederick stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know about the missing funds, the forged accounts, and if you so much as breathe near her again, I'll drag you to Parliament myself." Vincent's grin cracked. "You can't prove a thing." Selina slipped her hand into her reticule, pulling out the pawn they had found the night before. "Actually," she said sweetly, "we can." She flipped it over. Beneath the engraved KL was a small compartment now open, revealing a folded strip of parchment. Frederick unfolded it. Inside, written in hurried ink, "The next move is in the nursery." A chill passed through both of them. "The nursery?" Selina whispered. "Frederick, that's our home." Vincent's smirk returned. Slow, deliberate. "I told you. Dangerous perfume." He darted toward the servant's door. Frederick lunged after him, but the man vanished into the maze of hallways before the guards could react. Bee burst in through the main corridor, panting. "What did I miss? Please tell me someone fainted. I love when someone faints." Selina turned to her, eyes wide with fear. "He's going after the house." "The house?" Bee blinked. "As in, our home," Frederick said, already moving. "And if that message means what I think it does, and we may already be too late." Outside, the fog had thickened to a wall. The carriage wheels splashed through puddles as they raced toward Havensbury Manor. The silence between husband and wife was no longer cold. It burned with urgency. Selina clutched the locket at her chest. "The nursery. Frederick, what if—" "We'll get there in time," he said, though his voice betrayed the fear he couldn't hide. Bee peered through the small window. "Next time you two decide to unravel conspiracies, kindly choose daylight. And perhaps less fog." The carriage hit a turn. Ahead, through the mist, the faint glow of the manor came into view. But even from a distance, something was wrong. The windows flickered, not with candlelight, but with movement. Frederick's hand found Selina's. "Stay close." As they approached, a figure slipped out through the side gate, carrying what looked like a chest wrapped in cloth. Selina's voice broke the still air. "That's the governess. Miss Linton?" Bee squinted. "Except Miss Linton's been away for a week. So who precisely is wearing her cloak? What lies inside the chest carried from Havensbury Manor? Is the imposter governess part of the nightly lodge conspiracy? Or something darker?" As Selina and Frederick race into the night, they're about to uncover a secret that could tear open not only their marriage, but the Havensbury legacy itself. The night wind clawed at the carriage as it screeched to a halt before Havensbury Manor. The estate, once the very portrait of order and grace, now glowed with a strange, restless light, the sort that made even the ivy tremble. Selina was out of the carriage before Frederick could stop her. The shawl fluttered behind her like a flag of defiance as she sprinted toward the garden gate. Bee followed, boots sinking into the mud, muttering prayers and profanity in equal measure. "Selina, wait," Frederick called, but the Duchess was already halfway across the lawn, and halfway between fury and fear. Near the servants' path, a figure in a cloak was struggling with a small chest, its weight too heavy for her frame. When Selina shouted, the woman turned, her face pale under the moonlight, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "Miss Linton?" Selina demanded. The woman froze, then bolted toward the stables. Frederick cursed under his breath and ran after her, his coat slicing through the mist. Bee, bless her overly dramatic soul, stayed with Selina, who knelt by the chest the stranger had dropped. "Locked," Selina murmured, testing the latch. "Allow me," B said, brandishing the hairpin from her bun. "I learned this trick from a very persuasive violinist in Paris." 2 clicks later, the lock surrendered. Inside lay stacks of documents wrapped in blue silk, and beneath them something that made Selina's blood still, a silver baby rattle, engraved with the Havensbury crest. Her throat tightened. "This belonged to Eleanor." B frowned. "Eleanor? My daughter," Selina whispered. "She died in infancy. We buried this with her." For the first time, B didn't have a quip ready. Selina's hands shook. Who would unearth a child's grave just to— Before she could finish, Frederick's voice echoed from the stables. "Selina, inside the main hall, now." They ran. The grand foyer of Havensbury Manor had never felt so foreign. Lamps flickered low, and the portraits on the walls seemed to judge in silence. Frederick stood near the nursery door, his expression torn between disbelief and rage. "She got away," he said. "Vanished into the woods behind the stables. And the servants? Locked in the kitchen. Unharmed but terrified, whoever she was, she knew the house." Selina held up the rattle. "She took this. From Eleanor's grave." Frederick's face drained of color. "That's impossible." B crossed her arms. "Gentlemen, I know we're all processing trauma here, but may I suggest that corpses generally don't dig themselves up and steal financial ledgers? Whoever planned this wants you broken, not just ruined." Frederick ran a hand through his hair. The chest contained club ledgers, bonds, sealed letters, some signed by Harrow himself. Selina straightened. "Then the theft wasn't random. It's connected. Harrow and his accomplice wanted us to find this, to torment us, to make us chase shadows while they move freely." Frederick met her gaze. "Unless the shadows are chasing them." From the upper corridor came a faint creak. Selina froze. That came from the nursery. They climbed the stairs slowly. The air grew heavy, thick with dust and old grief. Selina hesitated at the nursery door, her hand trembling on the knob. The door opened to darkness. Curtains fluttered in the wind from an open window. Moonlight spilled across the floorboards, and there, in the middle of the room, stood a chessboard. Every piece was arranged for a game mid-play. Except for one. The knight. Gone. Selina knelt, tracing the board. "They're mocking us. The letters, the pawns, the riddles. Everything follows a pattern." Frederick knelt beside her. "A game, played inside my own house. And we've been the opponents who didn't know they were playing," she said softly. He looked at her, truly looked. The woman he had married, not the title he'd been given. "Selina, I should have listened. You tried to tell me months ago that something was wrong and You dismissed me," she finished, not cruelly but honestly. "Because I was emotional. Because I was inconvenient. Because I'm your wife." His eyes softened with the kind of regret that rewrites men. "No. Because I was a coward." For a moment, silence hung between them. Fragile, but finally shared. Then B, standing guard at the doorway, gasped. "There's someone in the garden." They rushed to the window. Down below, a lantern moved through the hedges, deliberate, rhythmic. It flickered twice, paused, then flickered 3 times. Selina recognized it immediately. "That's a signal. My mother used it when she was alive and to summon the old caretaker." Frederick narrowed his eyes. "The one who disappeared after the fire?" Selina nodded. "Mr. Lorimer. He used to play chess with me when I was a child." B frowned. "You're telling me the man who taught you chess vanished, your child's grave has been disturbed, and someone is sending coded signals through your garden?" "Selina, darling, your life needs fewer novels." Selina ignored her, already moving. "Come on. If it's really him, he might know who's behind all this." Frederick grabbed his coat. "And if it's not?" Selina's eyes flashed. "Then whoever it is, picked the wrong duchess to haunt." The garden stretched before them, silver under the moon. The lantern light bobbed once more, this time closer to the old gazebo. "Stay behind me," Frederick murmured. "Not a chance," Selina whispered back. They approached slowly. The figure turned, raising the lantern, revealing a face carved by years and secrets. "Good evening, your graces," said Mr. Lorimer, voice steady, almost kind. "I see you found the first clue." Frederick stepped forward. "Lorimer, you're alive?" "Oh, quite, though some prefer me not to be." He gestured toward the chessboard he'd laid on the bench beside him. "One game, your grace. It's the only way I can explain what's been done, and what's about to begin." Selina's voice trembled. "Why us?" Lorimer smiled faintly. "Because the game started long before your marriage, and I was only ever the messenger." He pushed the white knight across the board. "Your move, Duchess. Who is Mr. Lorimer truly serving, and what secret binds the Havensbury family to the chess game's deadly pattern?" As Selina and Frederick begin to uncover a web of betrayal reaching back generations, one truth becomes clear. Love may save them, but only if trust survives the next move. The lantern's light trembled between them, casting long, nervous silhouettes over the grass. Mr. Lorimer's eyes glimmered like two forgotten candles, tired, cautious, and strangely knowing. Selina hesitated before sitting across from him at the marble table of the gazebo. The chessboard between them looked ancient, its edges worn from decades of unspoken battles. Frederick remained standing, one hand on the hilt of his walking cane, a gesture less about protection, more about needing something to hold on to. "You're playing games in our garden, Lorimer," he said sharply. "You'll explain now." Lorimer nodded. "I intend to, your grace, but every truth must arrive in the right order, as in chess." Selina's tone was gentler, but no less firm. "Then start from the beginning. Why send us riddles? Why disturb my daughter's grave?" The old man's hand trembled as he moved a pawn forward. "Because they wanted me to, and because you were never meant to find out what was buried with her." Frederick's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Lorimer looked up, sorrow clouding his expression. "Eleanor's coffin didn't hold only your child, my lady. It held documents, ledgers, correspondence, and one sealed confession meant for the Duke. Your father-in-law's handwriting." Selina's pulse quickened. "The former Duke? What sort of confession?" "One that could destroy the Havensbury name," Lorimer said softly, "and save it, depending on who reads it first." Frederick's hands curled into fists. "You're saying my father was blackmailed," Lorimer interrupted, "by the founders of Knightly Lodge. They used charity as a mask, laundering funds through the asylums and schools under noble names. When the old Duke tried to expose them, they silenced him. The documents were hidden before he died, buried with the only secret no one would dare disturb: his granddaughter's grave." Selina felt cold spread through her chest. "And someone found out. Lord Harrow," Lorimer said grimly, "and others. The ones who sent you the letters. They needed you to retrieve the chest so they could follow. You've done precisely what they hoped, brought the truth into daylight." B, who had been leaning on the gazebo's column, let out a low whistle. "So to summarize, centuries of corruption, secret societies, dead dukes, and emotional damage. Marvelous. Continue." Frederick exhaled shakily. "So the theft, the letters, the woman posing as our governess, all of it was a distraction?" Lorimer nodded. "A test, your grace. They wanted to see how far you'd go to protect her." He turned to Selina. "And how much she'd risk to expose you." Selina's voice was steady, but her heart raced. "And what happens now, Mr. Lorimer?" He looked at the board, studying the pattern. "Now you play your next move wisely, because the people you seek, the ones behind Knightly Lodge, have already begun their endgame, and they know exactly how to hurt you." Frederick's eyes darkened. "Through her." Lorimer didn't deny it. He simply moved another piece forward. "The Black Queen approaches. That's all I can say tonight." He reached into his coat pocket and placed something small in Selina's palm, a silver key, tarnished and ornate. "The lock it opens lies beneath the library floor. What it reveals may bind you together, or tear you apart." Before either could speak, footsteps echoed from the hedges, hurried, closing in. Frederick turned sharply. "We're not alone." Lorimer's expression shifted, from calm to fear. "They've found me." "Who?" Selina asked. but the old man was already extinguishing the lantern. "Go," he whispered. "Whatever happens, remember, the truth demands sacrifice." The next second, a gunshot shattered the night. Frederick pushed Selina down behind the marble bench as Bee screamed. Another shot rang, striking one of the gazebo's columns. Lorimer fell forward, the chessboard scattering, pieces tumbling into the wet grass. Frederick lunged to catch him. "Lorimer!" The old man's breath rattled. "Knight to e5, he rasped. "That's where it ends." His hand gripped Frederick's sleeve once, then went still. The killer's silhouettes moved beyond the hedges, retreating before the guard's shouts pierced the air. Selina crawled to Lorimer's side, tears blurring her vision. No, he was trying to protect us. Bee crouched beside her, trembling but composed enough to press her shawl against the wound. "He's gone, darling. He's gone." Frederick knelt, staring at the fallen chessboard. The white knight, the piece that had begun it all, lay overturned beside his boot. He picked it up, jaw set. "They wanted this game," he said quietly. "Then we'll finish it." Selina rose, wiping her tears. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with new resolve. "You're right, but not by playing their way." Frederick looked at her, startled. Selina continued, her words sharp as truth itself. "They use secrecy. We'll use honesty. They use fear. We'll use light. You and I may have failed each other before, Frederick, but not this time." For the first time in months, maybe years, he smiled. A small, tired, real smile. "My brilliant Duchess." Bee sniffled loudly. "If either of you start kissing over a corpse, I'm leaving." Selina managed a laugh through the grief. "Not tonight, Bee." Frederick's gaze hardened again as he turned the chess piece over. "Knight to e5, he murmured. "We'll start there. Tomorrow at dawn." The next morning, Havensbury Manor was sealed to visitors. The servants whispered about the attack, the constables muttered about a robbery gone wrong. None of them were right. In the library, Frederick pried up the floorboards near the fireplace, following the exact pattern of Lorimer's last words. Beneath the oak planks lay a hidden compartment, and a small iron-bound box with an engraving identical to the silver key. Selina knelt beside him, heart pounding as he turned the key in the lock. It clicked open, with the weary sigh of something that had waited decades. Inside, wrapped in linen and sealed with crimson wax, was a single envelope addressed in elegant, trembling handwriting. "To my son, and the woman who will save him." Frederick's throat tightened. "That's my father's hand." Selina looked at him softly. "Then perhaps the real game wasn't against your enemies, Frederick." He met her gaze, "but against his sins." As sunlight broke through the windows, dust motes danced above the open letter, and far away, in the mist of London's streets, a carriage rolled slowly past the Havensbury crest carved into its door. Inside sat Lord Harrow, reading a message written in black ink. "The Duke knows. Proceed to the next phase." What secret lies within the Duke's father's letter? And what next phase has Lord Harrow already set in motion? As Selina and Frederick read the confession that will upend their past, the true enemy begins to close in, turning love, trust, and legacy into the final pieces of a dangerous game. The wax broke with a soft crack that felt far louder than it should. Frederick hesitated. The envelope in his hands weighed less than air, yet more than history itself. Selina touched his wrist gently. "Whatever is written there, we'll face it together." He nodded, unfolding the parchment with care. The handwriting was unmistakable, elegant but shaky, written by a man who'd spent his final days haunted by truths no title could protect him from. "My dear son, if you are reading this, I am already gone, and I pray your heart is gentler than mine once was. The world we built rests upon deception. Knightly Lodge was never a mere club. It was a covenant, forged in greed, maintained by silence and sealed by blood. I tried to leave, Frederick, but they reminded me that debts must be paid. I feared they would destroy everything I loved. Your mother, you, and the Havensbury name. So I traded what I could not bear to lose for what I should never have kept. The funds you believe were invested for charity were, in truth, retribution. I became their banker of sin. And when I sought redemption, I buried it. Beneath the innocence of a child I never knew I'd mourn. If you wish to end what I began, seek the ledger marked Night's End. It lies in the vault beneath the lodge. But beware. Those who guard it fear no law, only exposure. And Frederick, trust her. The woman who will save you will come cloaked in defiance and mercy. She will see the man you forgot to be. Love her fiercely, my son, for only love will finish this game. When the letter ended, silence swelled like thunder waiting for its cue. Frederick's hands trembled. He stared at his father's signature as though it were a ghost. He knew, he whispered. He knew everything. Selina closed her eyes. He wasn't just complicit. He was imprisoned by it. B, who had been pretending not to cry by dramatically dusting the shelves, sniffed. So, your father ran a secret criminal syndicate disguised as philanthropy, buried the evidence with your baby, and then left you both a riddle to fix it? How delightfully tragic. Selina gave her a look. B, what? I'm processing through humor. Frederick exhaled, voice steadying. The vault beneath the lodge. That's where it ends. Selina met his eyes. Then that's where we go. B gasped. Oh no, not again. You two are terrible at not getting shot. But Selina was already folding the letter carefully. You can stay, B. Stay? B put her hands on her hips. And miss the chance to infiltrate a secret society of rich men with fragile egos? Absolutely not. Frederick almost smiled despite the weight in his chest. We'll need to move quietly. They'll expect us to go to the authorities. Not straight into the lion's den. Selina nodded. Then we become the lions. That night the streets of London were half drowned in fog, the kind that seemed to listen. Knightley Lodge loomed ahead, a cathedral of secrets masquerading as a gentleman's refuge. Frederick had changed into plain clothes, his title tucked away beneath a simple coat. Selina, in a dark cloak, looked every bit the shadow of courage she had become. B followed, carrying what she proudly called her portable chaos kit, a bag containing hairpins, rope, and enough wit to disarm a battalion. They slipped through the servants' entrance, guided by a small key B had borrowed weeks earlier during one of her many strategic flirtations. The air inside was thick and still. Gas lamps flickered along the corridor like nervous eyes. Frederick whispered, "The vault will be under the east wing. My father mentioned old wine cellars beneath the billiard room." Selina followed closely, every sense alert. "And if Harrow's men are there?" "Then," B said cheerfully, "I distract them with my charm until someone screams." They reached the end of the hallway where an iron gate sealed off a stairwell. Frederick knelt, running his fingers over the lock. "It's new." Selina held up the silver key from Lorimer. "Try this." It fit perfectly. The gate creaked open with the reluctant groan of a conscience. The air below was colder and older. Torches lined the walls, leading to an arched chamber that smelled faintly of ink, smoke, and time. At the center stood a large desk, covered in ledgers, letters, and wax seals. But one book stood apart, bound in black leather, embossed with the emblem of a knight. "Night's End," Frederick breathed. He stepped forward, reaching for it, when a voice sliced through the silence. "Touch that, and you'll sign your death warrant." Lord Harrow emerged from the shadows, flanked by two men with pistols drawn. His smile was thin as a blade. "Ah, the prodigal duke and his radiant rebel. I must say, you do have your father's taste for theatrics." Selina stepped in front of Frederick instinctively. "It's over, Harrow. We have your ledgers, your letters, and enough evidence to destroy you." Harrow laughed softly. "My dear Duchess, you misunderstand. Destruction isn't my fear. It's my profession." He gestured toward the ledger. "You see, that book doesn't expose me. It exposes you. Your family funded everything, every false charity, every bribe, every lie." Frederick's fists clenched. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Harrow lifted a folded letter from his pocket, sealed with the Havensbury crest. "Your father's signature. Payment instructions. Proof that he wasn't a victim. He was the architect." Selina's heart lurched. "No." He tried to stop it. "We have his confession." Harrow's smile widened. Confessions are lovely bedtime stories, but the world prefers receipts. B, who had been silently edging toward a stack of barrels, muttered under her breath, "If I die tonight, I'm haunting you both." Selina's voice cut through the tension. "What do you want, Harrow?" He tilted his head. "Balance. Nightly Lodge doesn't need martyrs. It needs successors. Join me, and the name Havensbury remains untarnished. Refuse." He glanced at the guards, "and the Thames will cradle 2 more secrets by dawn." Frederick's jaw hardened. "You think we'd serve the men who destroyed my father?" "Destroyed?" Harrow smiled. "No, Your Grace. We merely finished what he began." The words hit like a blow. Selina's breath caught. "What he began?" Harrow's eyes gleamed. "You truly never wondered why your father-in-law adored the game of chess? Every piece had meaning, every move a debt, and every heir to Havensbury was born already in play." He turned his gaze to Selina. "Even you, my dear Duchess, do you think your marriage was coincidence?" Frederick stepped forward, fury rising. "Enough!" "Ah, yes," Harrow whispered. "The Duke defends the Duchess, as designed." The torchlight flickered, painting Harrow's face in gold and shadow. "Your father arranged it all. Your dowry, your alliances, your investigations, even your grief. Eleanor's death was the final move he made, to keep us loyal." Selina staggered back, shaking her head. "No, you're lying." But Harrow's smile said otherwise. Frederick reached for her hand, and that small human gesture shattered the spell. She met his eyes, saw the man he was, not his father's ghost. "No," she said fiercely. "Our love was never part of your game." And before Harrow could react, B, glorious, unhinged B, threw her lantern at the nearest barrel. It exploded into flame. "Time to exit dramatically," B shouted, pulling Selina toward the stairs. Frederick grabbed the ledger, clutching it to his chest as smoke began to fill the vault. Harrow cursed, his men scrambling as the ceiling groaned. The Duke and Duchess burst into the hallway, coughing, half-blind with smoke and adrenaline. Behind them, Nightly Lodge began to burn, its legacy finally consuming itself. They didn't stop until they reached the fog-drenched street. Frederick turned to Selina, the ledger heavy in his hands. "It's done." Selina's voice shook. "No, Frederick. It's only begun." Because through the flames, they had seen something impossible. A portrait on the wall, half-burned, revealing not the face of the old Duke, but another man entirely. The plaque beneath it read, "Founder of Nightly Lodge, Lord Thomas Harrow." Selina whispered, horror dawning in her voice. "Frederick, your father wasn't blackmailed." He looked back at the burning building, realization tearing through him. He was Nightly Lodge. As Nightly Lodge burns, the truth rises from the ashes. The Duke's father was not a victim, but the founder. Can Selina and Frederick survive the storm of betrayal that now threatens to destroy their legacy, their marriage, and their faith in each other? Or will love be the only piece left standing on this shattered board? The fire at Nightly Lodge burned through the night, a beacon of scandal visible from half of London. Flames licked the fog, curling upward like tongues of confession, while crowds gathered in silence, half horrified, half delighted. By dawn, the papers had already printed the headline, "The Havensbury Legacy in Flames. Duke and Duchess flee blaze at Nightly Lodge." Inside the safety of B's townhouse, an ironically cozy refuge for fugitives of high society, Selina stood by the window, the orange glow of the city still reflected in her eyes. "It feels wrong," she whispered, "to watch it burn and feel both relief and grief." Frederick sat at the table, his coat singed, hands blackened with soot. "You should feel neither," he said quietly. "It wasn't just a building, it was my father's graveyard, and I've set it alight." B entered, balancing 3 cups of strong tea and her usual lack of subtlety. "Darling, your father built an empire out of lies. Consider the fire your family's overdue confession." Selina didn't answer. She was staring at the blackened ledger spread open on the table. Though the edges were burned, the ink still lived. Lists of names, transactions, and symbols that looked disturbingly like chess moves. "Knight to e5, she murmured, recalling Lorimer's dying words. It's written here, again and again. Frederick leaned closer. Not a move, a code, or a location, Bee added, sipping her tea as though decoding criminal conspiracies before breakfast were entirely ordinary. Perhaps the fifth estate of some knightly order, or something deliciously biblical, like the fifth engraving on a tombstone. Selina's finger traced one name that hadn't burned. Thomas Harrow. Below it, written in her father-in-law's careful script, was another. Frederick Havensbury. Initiate. Her heart stilled. He wrote your name. Frederick froze. That can't be, I never. Bee leaned forward, squinting. Initiate, my dear Duke, implies consent. Did you perhaps attend a suspiciously dimly lit meeting in your youth? Frederick's face paled. There was one night, before my father died. He took me to a ceremony. I thought it was just a formal induction to the lodge. Men in masks, candles, oaths about honor. I didn't understand. Selina's voice softened. And now you do. He met her eyes, voice breaking. It means I inherited his sins the moment I accepted his blessing. She touched his hand. No, you inherited his chance to end them. The room fell silent, a fragile peace held together by faith and exhaustion. Then came a knock at the door. 3 short raps. A pause. Then 2 more. Bee froze. That's not a social knock. That's the run or hide kind. Frederick moved to the door, but Selina stopped him. Wait. A folded note slid under the door. She bent to pick it up, her pulse quickening as she recognized the seal. A black wax knight. The message was brief. You took the book. Now finish the game. Midnight. Westminster Abbey. Alone. Selina looked up. They want me. Frederick shook his head. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, Bee said, snatching the note. But a beautifully dramatic one. Selina took a deep breath. They wouldn't summon me if they didn't need me. They think I'm their final piece, and if I don't go, they'll find another way. One that costs more than I'm willing to lose. Frederick gripped her arm. I won't let you walk into that place alone. She met his gaze with quiet strength. Then trust me to walk in with purpose. His jaw tightened. Selina. No, she interrupted gently. You'll come. But not as my husband. As the man they underestimated. The son of their founder. The one they believe is still loyal. Bee blinked. You're proposing infiltration? At midnight? In an abbey? My God, I've never loved you more. By nightfall, the air over Westminster was sharp with rain and rumor. The abbey's spires rose through the mist like watchful sentinels. Inside, the great nave was shrouded in shadow. Candles flickered along the aisle, illuminating faces hooded in black. The circle was already formed when Selina entered, each figure holding a chess piece in one hand. At the far end stood Harrow, his voice echoing like a hymn twisted in meaning. Welcome, Duchess. You've played beautifully. But every game must end with checkmate. Selina's heart pounded, but her step was steady. And who precisely is losing? Harrow smiled thinly. Not I. Your husband has already taken his place among us. The hooded figure beside him removed his mask, and Frederick's face appeared beneath. Selina froze. For a breathless moment, betrayal burned through her like fire. Then Frederick spoke, voice cold, calculated, the way he'd once been before love had softened him. The Duchess has served her purpose. The ledger is in my possession. Harrow's grin widened. Excellent. Bring it forward, and your family's name will rise again. Selina's fingers twitched. The part of her that had loved him wanted to scream. The part that had learned from him stayed silent and listened. Frederick approached the altar where Harrow waited. He placed the ledger upon it, and then said quietly, Before I do this, I want to hear it from you. What was my father's final sin? Harrow chuckled. He tried to love what he was meant to own. Frederick nodded slowly. I thought so. And in one swift motion he opened the ledger, revealing not pages but a hidden pistol. The shot cracked through the abbey like thunder. Harrow staggered back, his candle clattering to the floor. Panic erupted, cloaks scattering, shouts echoing off the stone. Selina ran forward as Frederick grabbed her hand. Now! They fled through the cloisters, rain slicing through the stained glass as the storm outside broke loose. Behind them, the abbey burned with the second fire of Havensbury's redemption. Outside, gasping for breath, Selina turned to him. You knew they'd try to use you. He nodded. I let them believe they had. She exhaled a trembling laugh. You frighten me sometimes. Frederick managed a tired smile. Good. Because I frighten myself. B appeared from behind a statue, soaked and triumphant. In case anyone's wondering, I set fire to their cloaks. You're welcome. Selina threw her arms around Frederick, the rain washing soot and tears from her face. It's over, she whispered. But Frederick's expression darkened as thunder rolled again. No, Harrow's not dead. Selina turned sharply. What? He looked back at the burning abbey, jaw set. I missed. Far beneath the abbey in the crypt where the fire hadn't reached, Lord Harrow opened his eyes. Blood seeped through his sleeve, but his smile returned. Grim, patient, certain. From his coat he drew a final piece of parchment. The same handwriting that had haunted every Havensbury generation. If I fall, another shall rise. The board resets, the Duchess moves first. Selina and Frederick believe they've ended the game, but Harrow lives. And now, the board has changed. As secrets buried in Westminster's crypt awaken, the Duchess discovers that her own past may hold the key to the next move. Love and legacy collide once more, and this time, the price of truth will be her life. Rain still hammered the cobblestones when dawn broke over London. The city smelled of smoke and rebirth, and of secrets that refused to stay buried. Inside B's townhouse, silence had replaced sleep. Selina sat at the edge of the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the small chess piece Frederick had retrieved from the ruins of Westminster Abbey. The White Queen. She was mine, Selina whispered. The one I played with as a child. Frederick glanced at her from the window where he'd been pacing for hours. His shirt was still damp, his eyes shadowed from exhaustion. You said Lorimer taught you chess. Did he ever tell you where that piece came from? She shook her head. He said it was a gift from my mother. I never questioned it. B, half asleep in an armchair with tea gone cold in her lap, mumbled, Sweetheart, you've been handed death threats, confessions, and dead dukes. I think you've earned the right to start questioning everything. Selina turned the queen over in her hand. There was something carved into the base, barely visible under the candlelight. A single letter. H. Frederick leaned closer. H for Harrow. B blinked awake. Or H for Havensbury, darling. Try not to curse the family name until breakfast. Selina's voice was barely a whisper. Or Helena. Frederick frowned. Helena? My mother's name. Selina's hand trembled. Frederick. What if she wasn't who she said she was? By mid-morning, they were on the road to Surrey, to the small countryside estate where Selina's mother had lived and died. The journey was quiet, except for the occasional protest from B that her hat had not been designed for espionage in the mud. When they arrived, the cottage was just as Selina remembered it. Overgrown roses climbing the walls, shutters half closed as if still guarding secrets. Inside, dust motes drifted through slanted light. The air smelled faintly of lavender and paper, her mother's perfume, her mother's books. Selina ran her fingers along the mantel, over the framed sketch of a young woman with the same eyes she saw in her own reflection. I used to think she was lonely, she murmured, but maybe she was just hiding. Frederick began searching the shelves methodically, his mind already following the threads of logic that had saved them before. There must be something she left behind, as letters, a journal, anything. B opened a drawer with her usual lack of delicacy and produced a small wooden box. Oh, look, destiny in a box again. Inside were letters tied with blue ribbon. Most were faded, written in Helena's delicate hand, until one caught Frederick's attention. It bore the seal of Knightley Lodge. Selina's breath hitched. She was writing to them. He unfolded the letter. My dearest Thomas, I cannot do what you ask. The boy is innocent and the girl even more so. If you continue down this path, you will destroy not only the lodge, but yourself. I have hidden what you seek, and if you find me, you'll find the child too. But you'll never have both. Helena Frederick read it twice, then looked up, stunned. Thomas, that's Harrow's father. Bea let out a gasp that turned into a laugh. So your mother-in-law and your enemy's father were pen pals of doom. How delightfully scandalous. But Selina wasn't smiling. Her voice shook as she spoke. No, not pen pals. Lovers. Frederick's eyes widened. You're saying? Selina nodded slowly. Harrow is my half-brother. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the air between them. Bea whispered, Well, that certainly explains why the man's been obsessed with you. Frederick's jaw tightened. He's not just trying to destroy Havensbury. He's trying to reclaim what he thinks is his birthright. Selina pressed a hand to her chest. And my mother. She hid me. To protect me from him, from all of them. Bea looked around. If she hid you, darling, she probably hid something else too. Mothers with secrets always double-wrap their guilt. Frederick scanned the walls, noticing the uneven pattern of floorboards near the hearth. Here, he said. Help me. Together they pried up a loose board, revealing a hollow space filled with dust, a locket, and a folded parchment. Selina opened it, hands trembling. Inside was a birth record, dated 18 years earlier than she had ever been told. Her voice broke. My mother lied about when I was born. Frederick looked over her shoulder. The name beneath the date made his blood run cold. Selina Harrow Havensbury. Bea whistled softly. You're both the victim and the heir, darling. How very Shakespearean. Selina stared at the document, her mind spinning. All this time I thought I married into the darkness. But I was born in it. Frederick cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. No, you were born to end it. Tears welled but didn't fall. How can you still say that after everything? Because love, he said quietly, isn't about blood. It's about choice. For a moment the world seemed to still. Two broken hearts standing in the ruins of their history, holding on to something unburnable. Then Bea, ever the herald of chaos, peeked out the window. As touching as this is, your charming half-brother just arrived with 3 men and what I'm fairly certain is a rifle. Frederick's hand went to his pistol. He found us. Selina straightened, wiping her tears. Then it's time I stop running from my family. The sound of carriage wheels crunched over gravel outside. A familiar voice called from beyond the door. Calm, venomous, unhurried. Selina, Harrow said, you've taken my inheritance long enough. Let's finish this, as brother and sister should. Selina turned to Frederick. Promise me something. Anything. No matter what happens tonight, she said, don't kill him. Frederick frowned. He tried to kill you. She shook her head. If blood built this curse, blood won't end it. Bea grabbed a candlestick like a sword. I sincerely hope your pacifism comes with good aim. Selina smiled faintly. Always. As the front door creaked open, rainlight spilling across the floor, the Duchess of Havensbury stepped forward, no longer the pawn or the queen but the player. The truth is out. Selina and Harrow share not just a past, but blood. As the half-siblings face each other in their mother's house, the battle between legacy and love reaches its breaking point. Will mercy free them, or finish the game once and for all? The door swung open with a groan that seemed to echo the centuries of betrayal it was about to witness. Rain spilled through the threshold in silver ribbons, washing across the wooden floor like the past refusing to stay outside. Lord Harrow stepped in first, tall, composed, immaculate even in the storm. Behind him, 2 men carried rifles, their faces obscured by scarves. Close the door, Selina said calmly. Harrow smirked. Afraid of the neighbors hearing? Afraid of the rain putting out my temper, she replied, stepping forward. Frederick stood behind her, one hand resting on the mantel, the other near his pistol. Bea, God bless her, lingered at the sideboard pretending to be fascinated by a bowl of lemons, though her eyes were sharp and calculating. Thomas Harrow, Selina said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. You came all this way to kill your sister? His smile faltered just slightly. So Mother finally told you. She didn't have to. You did in your cruelty. Cruelty? His tone sharpened. You call it cruelty to reclaim what was stolen from me? You lived the life that should have been mine. The name, the title, the legacy. While I inherited nothing but silence. Selina took a step closer. You inherited freedom. You could have built your own world, but instead, you chose to burn mine. Harrow's eyes glinted. You sound like her. Good, she said softly. She tried to save us both. He laughed, a sound that cracked under its own bitterness. Save us? She betrayed me. She hid me from my father, erased me from his will, and gave you his protection. And now you dare to speak of love? Selina's heart ached. You think love and betrayal are opposites, but they aren't. They're the same hand, one open, one closed. Harrow's grip on his cane tightened. You always were poetic. Mother taught you that too, didn't she? Frederick spoke then, his voice low and precise. Leave her out of your war, Harrow. It's between you and me now. Harrow turned, studying him like a scholar reading a rival's thesis. Ah, the loyal husband. Tell me, Duke, what does it feel like to sleep beside a lie? Frederick's jaw clenched. It feels like redemption. B snorted softly. Good answer. Harrow's eyes darkened. You know nothing of redemption. Your father built an empire of manipulation, and now his son hides behind a woman's courage. Selina's patience snapped. Enough. She stepped between them, her hair damp, her voice rising with a force she hadn't known she possessed. All of you built your empires on silence. My father, your father, every man who thought power could erase pain. But the world is changing, Thomas. I'm changing it. He stared at her for a long, trembling moment, the mask of control cracking just enough to show the boy beneath the monster. You were supposed to be mine, he whispered. My ally, my blood. I am your blood, she said, but I will never be your mirror. Lightning split the sky outside. For a breathless instant the cottage filled with white light, and the truth stood naked in it. Harrow raised his pistol. Then you'll die like she did. Frederick moved before he thought. The shot tore through the air. Wood splintered, glass shattered. B ducked, cursing. When the smoke cleared, Harrow was on the floor, not dead, but wounded. Frederick stood over him, breathing hard, the pistol still in his hand. Selina's voice broke the silence. I told you not to kill him. Frederick met her gaze. I didn't. She knelt beside Harrow, pressing her shawl to the wound in his shoulder. He stared up at her, bewildered. You'd save me? After everything? Tears glimmered in her eyes. Because someone has to end this without another grave. Harrow winced, but his voice softened. You really are her daughter, and you're her son, Selina said. So let's bury the war with her memory. Frederick handed B a cloth. Get the constables. Tell them there's a confession to be made. B sighed dramatically. Always the boring part after the gunfire. Hours later, the storm had calmed. Dawn crept through the curtains, shy and pale. Harrow sat in the corner, bound but quiet. He'd given them names, every surviving member of Knightly Lodge, every ledger, every secret his father had buried. It will take years to unravel, Frederick said, rubbing his temples. But it's over. Selina looked out at the rising light. No, it's beginning. He frowned. What do you mean? She turned to him, her expression tender but unyielding. We've spent months tearing down what was wrong. Now we build what's right. The asylums, the schools, and we start again, clean, real charity, real honor. B leaned against the doorframe, her smile weary but proud. Well, if the world's going to burn again, at least it'll be for kindness this time. Frederick reached for Selina's hand. You've changed everything. Selina shook her head. We did. You finally learned to listen. He smiled, the kind of smile that rewrote the room. Then perhaps I can learn to love better too. You already do, she said softly. Harrow looked up, his voice hoarse. You think love absolves you? Selina walked over, meeting his eyes one last time. No, but it redeems what hate destroys. He looked away, tears lost in the gray light. Then perhaps, there's still a move left for me. Selina studied him. Then make it the right one. Weeks later, the scandal of Knightley Lodge became the talk of every parlor in London. But for once, the gossip turned into something useful. New schools, new hospitals, new beginnings funded by the very fortunes once soaked in deceit. Frederick resigned from Parliament, devoting himself to rebuilding what his father had ruined. Selina became the voice behind the reforms, the duchess who dared to stand in rooms full of men and remind them what compassion sounded like. And B? She married a poet and never let him forget she'd once set a nobleman on fire. As spring came, Selina stood in the garden of Havensbury Manor, the same one where her story had begun. The roses had grown wild again, untamed and alive. Frederick came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "The city speaks your name now," he murmured. "They call you the Duchess of Light." She smiled, resting her hands over his. "Then they finally see what love looks like when it wins." He kissed her hair. "And what does it look like?" Selina turned, meeting his gaze. "Like you." They stood together as the bells of London rang. Not for scandal, not for loss, but for peace. High above the garden in the tower room, a single chessboard sat untouched. The game that had begun in shadow now ended in sunlight. Every piece returned to its place, waiting, as all stories do, for another player to begin anew. The end, a story of love reborn through truth, courage, and grace.